It's the secrets that make us sick. You can't fix what you won't acknowledge. So let's have a conversation of this time. We're taking it out of the box, yeah, yeah. We're taking it out of the box. We're taking it out of the box. You know it's time. So let's talk about it.
Right. Welcome everybody. We are we are live. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been on, so I'm excited for us to get started and have this conversation. I'll tell you, for um, last week we had the freeze and the power was up and down. The week before that, I actually was dealing with COVID myself. So it's been it was rough, but thank God we made it and we survived. And so I'm excited to be back on the air and back having our conversations that we normally have. So let's get started right away. My guest today is Pastor Arthur Sneed, Brother Quentin Tyus, and Brother Derek Lewis. By the way, the maestro Derek Lewis is who composed. He wrote and composed our jingle, our intro song, and he did a fantabulous. Is that a word? I'm not sure that's a word or not, but we'll go with it for today. That is a fantabulous job. So thanks, Derek. So let's jump right in. Oh, that's a nice picture behind you. That's pretty cool, Derek. Uh,
Thank you.
I like that picture. Anyway, let's get on task on subject. We're talking about today something very interesting. And I want to, we're talking about what's happening in the church. And before we get started, I want to say this that there are folks who might hear this conversation and assume that this is about bashing the church. And that is not what this show is about today. This show really is about having a conversation to kind of figure out some things that are going on. So let's jump right in the conversation. Derek, I know you work in an environment. Well, before we start there, let me, I guess, give some editorial comment. Um, Church now, in terms of like how I grew up, seems to be kind of a very different environment. And my fear and concern is that my grandchildren will not have experienced church the way that me and Pastor Sneed uh, and you all kind of grew up. We grew up in an environment where church was a very central part of hey Pastor Free, where church was an essential part of our lives. I remember growing up, I was at church on um, obviously Sunday, and then there was Wednesday, there was Thursday, then there was Saturday. So at least 4 days out of the week, I was at church and we were doing things. We had and it probably was even five, but I know it was church on Sunday, and that's not just one service. You had to go to the regular service. You had to come back at night for BTU. You had then you and if you did anything, and on Thursdays was youth, Wednesday was Bible study, Thursday was choir rehearsal, Wednesday was Bible study, Saturday was youth. So we were in church a lot, and it comprised the makeup of how I grew up. And I see now that there's not really a lot of younger folks who are actively involved and attending church the way that I remember growing up in church. And so, Derek, what I want to ask you is, because you happen to be in a unique position, in that you work with a lot of youngsters. You work with this new crop of people who are growing into teenage and adult years and young adult years and those kinds of things. Why don't they attend church? What have you heard from them as to why church is not something that appeals to them?
Well, great. Such a great question.
Yeah, I told you I was just jumping right in there. I wasn't even going to, grease it up. I was just going, let's just jump right on in.
Right.
That probably wasn't the best analogy, grease it up. We'll deal with that later. Come on, Derek.
Okay, so yeah, I'm fortunate enough to work with teenagers. Many of them do not go to church, and I have had the conversation over and over and over just to, because I'm curious. I will say the thing that the most eye-opening experience that I had with a student was I felt like I needed to explain something about the church to them. Like I felt like I was trying to, I don't know, overcompensate, and just like if they would just hear me and understand what I had to say about the church, that their opinion would somehow be different.
Okay.
And finally, because they don't go to church and they see the church as like something that's totally out of date and out of touch and just on the wrong side of every social issue and just, wrong, nothing. And it's almost like, why would you go to church is the better question, for them. And so I was going through my whole spiel of trying to explain all the great things and why I love church and all this kind of stuff. And they basically said to me, well, it's not that I don't understand all of these things. It's not that we don't know about the church. We see you for everything that you are. We understand all of what you are, and we don't want it. And I think for the most part, it has a lot to do with church does not be in the same space. It doesn't occupy the same space for them and their lives as it did for us, I guess, coming up. And mostly they just see it as something that is out of touch, out of date, and like I said, on the wrong side of every social issue, in a time when they are trying to be on the right side of every one of those social issues, if that makes sense.
Okay, and I want to jump to Pastor Sneed, and then I'm gonna hit you, Q. But so, Pastor Sneed, would you agree that the church has been on the wrong side of social issues, and that would be a valid concern for folks coming up now? And if so, where on what issue specifically do you think maybe we have missed the mark?
I think that's good. A good question. I think that for years, and I say years,
Something happened to your voice. You went out for a minute.
oh shoot,
You're there now. You're there now.
my end.
Yes, sir.
I think that it has been that, like for years, and maybe even potentially like for decades, for sure for decades, that there have been times that that the church as a whole, and when I say the church as a whole, I'm not just talking about the church. So I'm talking about evangelicals. I'm talking about the church as a whole, in a lot of issues have been silent. And if you understand silence, then silence can sometimes lead to consent. And then you also have those who, that if we're silent, if we're not using our voice, if we're not active, if we're not present in a lot of these social issues, as many are now, then I also feel that individuals can write their own narrative. And so I feel that in a lot of cases, we have just done church. Now I can only speak for myself. Is that growing up as a PK, we did church. You talked about it earlier. In church all the time, all the freaking time we in church, and that was cool. That was cool then. But now there are a lot of things that need to be done. Maybe some of those things was being done back in the days, but I didn't see them. So I didn't see, the church having a stance. And I'll go back to the Black church, even like having a stance concerning social issues, social justice, Now it's more in your face. You almost gotta be involved because if you're not involved, if you're disengaged, and you're doing your people a disservice. Resources that's needed. Many people, unfortunately, have felt. I think that the church is is the place where you just give. You just give to the church, you give to the pastor, you give to the building. You give. You give of your time, you give your treasure, you give of your talent. Whereby many haven't seen the church actively giving or involved in the community to support in a more tangible way. Even the political climate, there has been for years a divide concerning, we have limitations even as the church and what you can do politically. By some, sadly, have just shunned and done nothing because you can't do everything as the church. So I think that in a lot of areas we've done that, and I think we've even operated as an organization versus an organism. And I'm just speaking about in the past, whereby we weren't involved with individuals or going to certain things or being more active in young people's lives or and so I think for multiple reasons we know a lot of them. The church has gotten a bad rap over the years, and I think now we're either playing catch up or we're trying to clean up some things of our forefathers and trying to make a significant difference in families' lives, in the community's life. But man, that takes time. It takes time to undo a load of a lot of things that have been done, and you cannot change when an individual have saw or have seen for a number of years. It's hard to undo those things. So sometimes I feel like as much as many of the things that people do, it's almost like a drop in the bucket when you start looking at all the things that have been done over a period of time and over a number of years.
And I'm gonna get to you, Bishop Foreman, after I get to Q, because I want you to address both of the questions I've asked. So Q, here you come from, and not come from, but you are connected with a lot of folks who absolutely have no taste for church at all. And you being raised in the church and in the Pentecostal kind of environment as well, I know you guys were churching all day, every day on Sundays. I mean, it was a consumption of time in that environment. So when you are interacting with folks who like, no, that's not for me, from the position of those people, kind of what are you hearing? What are you hearing as to why they are not interested in dealing with the church?
Okay, first, Bishop Sneed, you might want to check the batteries on your earphones. You kind of going out, like we heard most of what you're saying, but you kind of go out for a short portion of time. So check out, it might be your batteries on your earbuds. Yes, Dr. Bright. Tuesday's prayer, Wednesday Bible study, Thursday choir rehearsal, Friday youth night, Saturday prayer and witnessing, then Sunday morning service, Sunday evening service, and you might have to go to a guest church in the afternoon, but that still didn't take away from you going to church later on that night. So you still got 3 services. So that didn't change anything. Short and sweet. What I see, and this is from people I talk to on a quite regular basis. And even when these questions arise, I kind of break it down in 2 categories. Number one, the church as an organization. So whenever you ask a question, either someone's referring to the church as an organizational structure or church as the people who represent the body of Christ. So they can be 2 different things. Now, what I get most of the time, it can go both ways. A lot of people have issues with the organization as a church, and some people have issues with people who seem to be hypocrites. But what I will say is I think the biggest issue that I see people who don't want to have anything to do with it, church people, it appears that we are walking contradictions. And what I mean by walking contradiction, let me even go to the first part of it. Like, we preach love, we love everybody, but there's certain things that we say that kind of contradict that. And also, let's talk about, the old saying that the the church is the most segregated time in America is on a Sunday morning. How can we tell people about love and we love everybody and Jesus loves everybody, and we don't even connect with other churches racially? We can't even come to unified conclusions. Even, you know, there's still a lot of segregation within the church. So how can you preach this Jesus that loves everybody and we don't communicate the same way with other churches? We got about 30 different denominations, and it's like, well, these and a lot of these denominations also think that the other denominations are going to hell. There's so much perceived division within the church. How can you and let me, and then I'm gonna stop because I think I'm going too many different directions. So from a person looking on the outside who has 5 different friends, these 5 friends all attend different churches that have different denominations, and the way that they believe is totally different. And one person say, well, God love you the way you are. The other person say, you got to get yourself cleaned up first. The other person just trying to tell you need to be baptized. And the other person so it's like, there's nothing you can directly tell a person because they're getting different sets of instructions from everyone who they encounter, who all claim to be a Christian, which is, I mean, if you ever heard, that's why I said I don't like that term, because it can mean so many different things. But I'll stop for right now and let somebody else jump in.
I'm going to go into a part of that in a minute, and I don't want to get there yet, so I'm glad we stopped. Bishop Foreman, so you've heard kind of the questions posed and kind of the answers. You have a church that has a great mix of older adults and young adults, and even kind of in the middle ground. How do you balance in your environment all of these different age groups and still keep them entertained? Entertained is the wrong word. Let me scratch that. I certainly didn't mean to say. How do you engage is the word I was trying to say. How do you keep them engaged? Because I went, and I remember probably the second or third time I came to preach for you in Denver. My wife didn't come. I called her on the phone and I said, these folks is having a party. I mean, it's like a club in here. I mean, and everybody's involved. The old folks, I don't know what kind of dancing they was doing, but they was trying. The young folks, they was popping and locking it and dropping it, but everybody was engaged. And so, in this challenge of where people, and I'm gonna get to some of the other issues, but from your perspective, how do you keep all of these people engaged in a way that they want to keep coming back?
Great question. So I think to answer that question specifically is, sheep know the voice of their shepherd, the scripture says. So I think the reality is, you can do all of the things, lights, the series, all of that. I think the reality is engagement, making sure that we present the gospel in a palatable way, to where everybody can you hear me?
Yeah, you're kind of staticking out too. Are you on headphones as well?
I intentionally did not get them for that reason. How about now?
Okay, keep going. You said keeping them engaged. What?
Sure. So as it relates to that engagement, I think the reality is presenting it in a way that it's palatable for every individual, regardless of their background, pedigree, whether they went to church or not. So the church is not a monolith. So I have had the benefit of being in an area like Denver, and I used to look at it like as a sentence versus a benefit. Denver is 46 out of 50 for lowest church attendance in the nation. And number 2, it's only 4% African American. There are 62,217 African Americans in Denver. I know because my map right over there tells me the exact number. And so Denver is not a diverse area. And so I have had to realize that I wasn't reaching church people. So the people that I was reaching, they weren't in church Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we had to create an entire different culture that one presented not just Jesus, but then also presented church in a way to where people were seeing results. And so for me personally, everything we do is connected to results. It results in those individuals' lives and results in seeing more lives change. If it doesn't get results, then it's not something that we practice. And by the way, Derek, that painting, the last time I was on a show with you, you had a good piece of art. So you the art man. I've been looking at that piece of art the whole time.
I told him that when I first,
Did you do it?
It's why y'all want my piano. That's my piano.
That painting is everything. I like that painting. I want that painting.
I'm gonna send y'all a bill. I know Foreman got all the money. He got all the people and all the money. So
Okay, so Derek, so when these kids say it's just not for me, and then you hear Q say that the folks have said it's because what's real? I mean, what's right? You got one person saying this, one person saying this, one person saying this. How do you combat that in your conversations?
I would like to kind of see. I saw part of the comment that came across from Pastor Freeman, Pastor Deshaun Freeman, and I would like to. Yeah, I feel like that is on the target because it's not just the church; it's every system. Like this generation, I mean, let's be honest. Like it's not just this generation; it's just this. We have been progressing more and more with each generation, and this generation is one that every system. I mean, I don't care if it's capitalism or the church. They're going to be tried. They're trying each one of these systems and saying, hey, like what Bishop Foreman just said, is this working for me? Is there any integrity found in this system? Is it useful in this time? If it's not, then no. And to kind of just answer some of what Pastor Sneed was mentioning is that it's not just the silence, because yes, the church has been silent on issues, but the church has also been very, very vocal on some of those same issues. And when I'm talking about social issues, I'm not just talking about like social change and that kind of stuff or whatever. I'm talking about things like women's rights. Like misogyny is alive and well in the church. You still got pastors arguing on Facebook whether or not women should be preachers or what the role of women should be in the churches. I mean, you can go, so that's sexism. You can talk about the patriarchy. You can talk about things like homophobia, transphobia, just all of those things are issues that are right there in the church. And the church oftentimes is on the wrong side first. And then somehow later on, we find our way making, so it's not like we lead unless we're leading from behind.
So it seems hypocritical then.
It is hypocritical, like what Q was saying. It is hypocritical because we make God look so bad.
And that's where, because one of the things when this whole subject came up, one of the things that I have heard a lot of, and I wanted to bring to this discussion today, and I want to start with Pastor Sneed with it, and bring the do church folk, and I'm specifically not using the word Christian, although they can fall into that category, but do folks who attend church, do they give God a bad rep?
You know what, to be honest, if we're talking about, can y'all hear me good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, remember I was going to check it. If we be honest, we're talking about a perfect God. And we're trying to compare a perfect God with imperfect people. So if that be the case, if we're going to be, if individuals, kind of like what was going back, like the church, so whether it be the group and the body as a whole or individuals, regardless, I would say to a great degree, yes, because we're not a full and perfect and pure reflection of who he is, but we represent him. And so I think that if we can represent him, and those that do represent him properly are the ones that will admit that, number one, I'm imperfect, that I'm not in a position to judge you, while at the same time, I may be able to, we can sharpen each other, we can make each other better. But then, yes, for sure, I think to a great degree that we give him a bad name because we take some things, even in scripture, we misinterpret it, we miscommunicate it. And then even in that, then that makes him seem as if he's not real and he's not relevant. So I think, yes, to a great degree, especially when we do a load of a lot of the things and stuff in his name, but he hadn't sent us to represent him in that respect. And y'all about love for in one case just a while ago.
I'm gonna take it even further, not because we are imperfect people, because that would be certainly a good angle. But I'm even going so far as, because can we just put it out on the table and be real? Church people are messy, and it's real hard to talk about restoration and love, because the first thing we do, and it's given rise to people and organizations and not organizations, but people and platforms like Obnoxious TV, like Larry Reed, and other places like that. They have platforms because of how messy church is. And if they wasn't messy like that, these folks would have to find a different way to have their platforms. So I don't want to whitewash it to the extent that we say, yes, we represent him poorly because we're imperfect, but can we also maybe even agree that we represent him poorly because we like drama and mess? Would that be fair?
I would like to say, I think, to take it a step further than that, because when you said that, it made me wonder, why is the church perceived as messy? And the first thought that came to my head is we play a big part in that, not for being messy, but for our continuance to try to paint a picture that's not true. Our lack of transparency makes things messy. So you know what? Like, there's a lot of people, if you ever, I talk to people who all have the craziest issues, but a lot of people are willing and open to talk about their issues, their mess ups. They'll tell you when they screwing up, and it doesn't come off the same way as messy because they're being open and transparent about it. But when you try to paint a picture a certain way, and now you're trying to work so hard to uphold a certain appearance, in the meantime, all this stuff coming out about you or other people or church or relationships, it appears messy because now you're trying to cover up something that could be a testimony, either whether it was something that you dealt with or the past, or something that you're currently dealing with in the present. But I think that's why it appears so messy, because we try so hard to cover it up.
So that would be a good question for you, Foreman. Why does the church? Why are we scared to be more transparent? Because here's the deal. And before you answer, I want to throw this in, and I know I'm talking a lot today instead of just moderating. But I am a flawed person. Okay, I have issues. I do stuff that if people who saw me do some of the stuff that I do, and then they know I'm a pastor, a bishop, or this, that, and the other, they're gonna go, I didn't know that pastors did that. Let me tell you, I've said this before. If I stub my toe, I am probably gonna say, damn, that hurts.
Oh, that's PG-13 for you.
Yeah, that ain't nothing.
but then they go, oh, he said, damn. And I'm not referring to no Bible damn. I mean, damn, it hurts, right? So what I'm saying to you, Bishop Foreman, is why is it hard for us to be transparent? And is it the chicken before the egg? Can we not be transparent because folks are going to talk about it, or are we not transparent because folks are going to talk about it?
I think that's a great question. So one, just to the prior question about the church people messy, just people in general are messy.
Sure.
Let's remember, before there were the platforms you mentioned, there was National Enquirer and tabloid news, and that's just the nature of people. We always gravitate towards stories that have some level. If I was to be honest, there is a level of narcissism that every individual possesses that likes to see somebody else's issues because it takes the focus off of their own issues. That is just the nature of human beings. So people in general are that way. What happens is that when you have different platforms and different things that you mentioned, it's sometimes unexpected. And I heard the end of what Q said, and the end of it I thought was fantastic. Is that, you know, the reality is a lot of those struggles can be turned into testimonies. Let's remember, the Bible is the most scandalous, mess-filled book in the entire. Listen, like David, you sleeping with your boy's wife that you were supposed to be out fighting, you sleeping with her, you get her pregnant, you try to kill him. He's so loyal to you. Like, this is an episode of Power. He's so loyal to you that he won't leave your feet. He's staying with you, like this whole situation. So you put him on the front line, they get killed, and then your first son dies. Now you got to do another son, Solomon. Your son Absalom is trying to kill you. You got all these wives, and you still ain't satisfied. Then you got, like, it's a mess. Like, that's messy. But the Bible says that David was a man after God's own heart. So I think the reality is finding the beauty in brokenness and realizing that your strength comes from revealing those areas where there are struggles, where there are challenges, and not doing that. I think the reason many people don't do that is because of fear of judgment, because of fear. And I think this is maybe the part that it cut out when I didn't hear what Q was saying about the thought that, you know, I need to present this image to people. And many leaders have that thought, I need to be this. And so it creates a Superman, a superhero complex to where I have to present this to people, not realizing that the reality is your greatest strength comes from revealing that. And so as a leader who leads in a transparent way, I recognize that's best for my own personal health, because I don't intend to let this kill me. And 1,700 pastors quit every single month. And I think part of that is because once they can no longer uphold the Superman image, all of a sudden now, you know, I have to go be this other person that I'm not used to, comfortable being. And those are internal issues that has nothing to do with God. That has nothing to do with the seat of being a pastor. Those are internal, personal issues people have to work through.
Derek,
yeah, I just want to, because perspective is such a huge thing for me, and most people know that I didn't want to have the church perspective only, because that's all I knew, because I worked in the church, grew up in the church. And so now, because I do something a little bit different, I've been able to see some other things and to understand that what used to make so much sense to me because I had church brain and only church brain now doesn't, because I can look through some other perspectives. So I wanted to say that what Bishop Foreman just said is what is key, because I think what we may be missing is that it's not that, because it's not that the church is messy. Because yeah, the church is messy, but like he said, everyone is messy. But it's the hypocrisy behind it. It's the teachings. It's what Bishop Foreman said is so true. The Bible is scandalous, right? And he talked about David. So let's talk about David. Let's talk about Lot. Let's talk about all these people. To a young person now, a religion that says David is the man after God's own heart, and this is the God that we serve. It's strange to them. It doesn't make sense. Now, it makes sense to us because we grew up in church, we know or whatever, but that's strange to a person, because they would say, what kind of religion would say that David is special and, you know, and would be teaching about David and saying he's a man after God's own heart when he did some of the messed up stuff he did? Or like one of the things we always kind of comes up is the story of Lot. And I was just talking about it just the other day. It's just how, okay, so you mean to tell me you just destroyed these two cities, right? Sodom and Gomorrah, and everybody except for Lot and his family or whatever. And Lot survives. His wife almost does, but she turns around and dies because she looked back, you know, and turns and thought, so she doesn't make it. But then right after that, you're in the cave with your daughters. And if you know the story, you know, if you know, you know, like, you know, what we say, if you know, so it's like, same thing, you know, you can go back to Noah and the flood. Right after the flood, you know, he's saying that all of a sudden now he's drunk and exposed his nakedness. So it's a lot of this kind of stuff that comes in the biblical narratives that when you start saying this, so it's not that they don't know. They know very clearly everything you're saying, and they're saying that is messed up. I don't want a religion where your leaders and your paragons are people who slept with somebody's wife when you're the king. So Bathsheba can't say no because you're the king, right? So you sleep with her. Not only do you sleep with her, but you get her, you kill her husband, and then you lie about it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's just, that is messed up to a lot of people.
But Bishop, I was just saying, I didn't mean to cut you. There may be a delay. I apologize. But I think what you're saying is a great point. But that actually is that's the whole beauty of the gospel. Like, that's the whole point. The whole point is all these people got issues. Everybody on here, everybody in that book, and that is the beauty of the reason why there's a necessity of the gospel. Like it is not that we, because the question you asked earlier, Bishop, was, do we give God a bad name? And certainly God, the way he's perceived, you even see in the Old Testament, he refers often about for the protection of his name. But at the end of the day, like God, he doesn't need us. I mean, it's not that he needs us. He desires us. He loves us. And that's what he died for. So I hear what Derek is saying, but I think that's the whole point. Like, that's the whole point of the gospel, is that look at all these people, look at all their issues, yet they were still able to accomplish this and so.
Right. We get that. I get that. And I agree. But I'm saying for a generation now, that no longer works for them. Like, it worked for me. And I'm like, yeah, I want to embrace a religion that says that I can be messed up. And no, these people are saying, no, go get some therapy, fix it, be better. Like, don't sleep with the wife. Because it's not, again, it goes back to that hypocrisy thing. Like, we assume that everybody is doing crazy stuff like that. No, like, yes, there are some people who are, I mean, like, in terms of like the Bible or whatever, yes, we all have a bend. We all have, iniquity. We all sin. We get it. But not all of us are murderers. Not all of us are sleeping with all kinds of women outside of marriage you know what I'm saying? Some people are trying to be good, upstanding citizens in the community, and they feel like they don't need church to do it because the church is full of so many people who are doing those things.
And so, Bishop Sneed, then my question to you will be, so how do you change their mind? If given Derek's narrative is where these folks are, how do you convince them that this is the prime place for you then?
I think as been stated that when the focus is not on people and it's not on the church, whether we're talking about the organization or the organism, but the focus is on Christ and our need for him, regardless to if we feel that we are better than someone else or not, which may be reason enough to even have him even more and not being self-righteous. But when the focus is on him, or as been stated, the gospel, then we see that we need a savior. So I think we move away from that and we want to get people in the church. When we get people in the church, and now we're talking about religion. And who wants a religion? Who needs that? Like, we don't need that. That's not relevant in this day and time. And so when we start talking about relationship with Christ, and then even more so when we have a relationship with people as well, when we are ambassadors of Christ, when we are kind of going back, I don't know if this was like the initial question and statement, but I think that we lose our relevance when we stop reaching, when we're not present in the community, when we're not aiding and assisting individuals, when we're not demonstrating the heart of God and we're only articulating the heart of God. I think that becomes a problem. And so when people are able to see what we are saying, or they're able to see the glory that's within the gospel and within the word of God and within God himself, then I think that, okay, now I may want to know your God. But then if we're just judging individuals, or if we're not connected with individuals, or if we're not transparent, as been stated, even though transparency has its levels of what individuals can handle, but then when we're not being open, honest, or transparent with individuals about who we are, and we are imperfect, but we're serving and striving to serve a perfect God, then I think that becomes some of the difference makers as well.
So then we're talking about what you're saying. Then maybe Derek's what the folks there is talking about maybe what they could handle more, and I'm trying to tie in what you guys are saying, maybe what they could handle it more if there was real demonstration of that love, of that compassion, of that, all of that, even though there's all of this messed up stuff. What they're not seeing is the demonstration of relationship with God. They're hearing it and then saying, okay, well then no, I don't want that. Right?
If we would just be it, you know what I'm saying? If we would just be it, if we would demonstrate love, like, and that's the thing that I think, because even in listening to what he's saying, because that's something that I hear a lot of young people also pushing against, because now you got like this whole thing about like decolonization, right? Like, so people are asking questions like, can we in the classroom, we talk about decolonizing the classroom, and people are asking, well, can you decolonize religion? Can you decolonize Christianity? Can you decolonize the church? Or is it steeped in racism? Is it steeped in white supremacy? You know, all these questions. Is it steeped in colonialism? And is that part of what the evangelical church is all about? Like, because if you believe it past this need, if you believe that Christ is the answer, then he is the answer for you. This is what they'll say. And so I don't have a problem with that. Let him be your answer. Why do you feel like he's got to be my answer too? See what I'm saying?
Well, he is the answer though, right?
No, that's not what everybody believes. Now, I believe it. I'm just saying everybody doesn't, and they feel that your need to be so pervasive and go and tell everybody what they got to believe and all that is somehow steeped in colonialism.
There's one more thing I wanted to add to that also. In addition to those things, the church, we got to kind of change up how we do things. The church has to be more interactive. I think the days of people sitting down and listening to someone speak to them for an hour, that's dying out. So that's a big part of it. Now you have to be interactive and engage people. One thing, I've been in sales for over 20 years. And one thing that one of the biggest rules is the best salesperson is a person that does 90% listening and 10% talking. And matter of fact, even when I'm asking questions, I'm only asking a question to prompt more questions and more discovery out of you. So we have to figure out ways to be interactive. People don't want to just hear you without having input and being able to ask questions, talk through things. There's different. From the time I've done my meetings, either in person pre-COVID or online, I've had more people come to my thing than some small churches that I've been a part of. And it's because there's an interaction. People don't want to just hear you, but they also want to be heard as well. So we have to find ways to integrate that in, or you will continue to lose people, because you just preaching is not going to be enough. We can get preaching anywhere and anytime we want to. And as good as a preacher you are, we can find other preachers that's just as good, if not better than you online. And that's the truth. So why do I need to go out of my way to just listen to you? I can get that anywhere, anytime. But what you cannot get anywhere, anytime is thoughtful conversations and dialogue between people who are sharing. That's something I don't know the answer to, but that's something that people are going to have to incorporate, or the church will continue to dwindle.
So, and I'm going to have Bishop Foreman pick in on this, but I want to ask you a clarifying question, Q. What does interactive church look like to you?
It has to be give and take. It has to be sharing. Now there are times, you know, I'm not saying get rid of preaching, get rid of sermons. That's absolutely necessary. But there's two forms of Bible study that I've been a part of historically. One Bible study works almost like a church service, and you get a preacher who preaches, you know, they run it just like a regular Sunday service. There's other Bible studies where you talk about the Bible, you ask questions, you have other people give input, there's feedback, there's interaction, there's back and forth, there's dialogue. And those are the type of services. In addition to the Sunday service, you have to incorporate those in there. You got to do other things as well. You gave a shout out to Pastor Free earlier. I looked online and I saw on his church he was doing some workout stuff, you know, and I'm like, that's cool. You are finding ways to interact with people on different levels.
I actually saw that too. The workout thing that they were doing, and they were streaming it, and I thought that was cool. So shout out to you, Pastor Free. That was a very good idea. Bishop Foreman, how do you keep your people engaged in terms of how does Harvest interact?
I mean, it's a multitude of ways, but I think one of the things that's really important, I love what Derek said earlier about context. So the church is a monolith. So that's the beauty of the tapestry of different churches, even different denominations. Like, let's remember, Jesus said he didn't come to bring peace but a sword, which means that would be that intimated and communicated separation. He even said a man's enemies would be those of his own household. So if you look at that from a real granular level, there's going to be different ways of doing different things. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, that's a good thing. There are going to be some people who want to sit, they don't want to touch their neighbor. They want to sit there. They want to be quiet. They like that type of church. I don't like that type of church. I think that's boring. I hate it. I want to interact. I want to party. Like, that's why when you came to Harvest, it's a party, because I want to party. Because I believe it should be a celebration. There are some people who might say, I don't like all of that. I don't like that loud music. I like them lights moving like that. I don't like all of that. That preacher got too much energy. I just want the man to stand there and talk to me. Well, that's great. Well, you can go get that. At the end of the day, sheep know the voice of their shepherd. And so I think the beauty of it is, and I love what you said, interactivity, is that because the church is not a monolith. That is exactly why in America we have 350,000 churches, because the church is not a monolith. There are multitudes of ways in which people express, in which people do different things. You know, I sit on a lot of political, and to get to your question, I sit on a lot of political boards and committees and things like that. Throughout the state and federal levels. And sometimes when I'm with other clergy, it's amazing to me because, you know, they'll do certain things and I'm like, oh, okay, that's really unique. That's different because I come from a different background. The beauty of God's church is that we are not a monolith. We don't all do it the same. We don't all say it the same. We don't all preach it the same. We don't all do it the same. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's a good thing I think we should celebrate. To your question about how does Harvest keep people engaged? So we do a lot of different things. We leverage technology a lot. Our app is the number one ways that people connect with Harvest and do that. We were doing a lot of digital before COVID and what have you. So there's a tremendous engagement. There's a tremendous millennial engagement, tremendous engagement of, Gen Y and Z, the new ones. You have a lot of that engagement, but that's because we make church interactive. It's their church. So the way we approach it is young people can serve and be a part of the church just as their parents do. So they're engaged. They don't just sit in a big people church and youth church. When I used to be an associate pastor, I used to look at that and say, there are two churches in here. And I didn't like that concept. So we did it differently. So we try to leverage technology to engage people as much as possible. And, you know, last year we saw just shy of 600 people give their lives to the Lord. And to God be the glory. We want to see even more this year. But those are first time people giving their lives to the Lord in the midst of a pandemic, where the primary tool that we had to use was technology. So that's how we choose to do it. I think the thing to celebrate is that everybody is not the same. Everybody's not going to be the same. Some people don't want no app. Some people want Sister Johnson to get up and read announcements with her glasses like this here and do this. Some people want that. And that's what they want. And that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what they got.
Pastor Jones says something. He says, it sounds like we are explaining the why, but never address the what. Derek said it best the other night. Why would people want to serve a God like that when they look at what we do? And so what is the what, Pastor Jones? Put that in there. Because here's where I want to take it to. Here recently, for some reason, I guess you watch, I don't know the algorithm of TikTok. I'm an older guy learning how to be on these platforms. But apparently, if you spend any time watching a certain type of video, those are the videos that TikTok apparently feed you more of. And so what I have been seeing a lot of lately, and this was kind of a concern for me, is a lot of folks on TikTok, and it's a lot of different people on TikTok, are exposing the lunacy of church. And so one of the popular things is, what weird Christian video sticks in your head or whatever, and it's the same guy with the same smirk like that, and then they go off to this video and you hear some of the wildest stuff, like this one pastor talking about that Starbucks had learned the secret because semen is men's milk, and they learned that the reason why it's addictive is because Starbucks has learned how to put men's milk or semen into their coffee blend. And you go, and he's saying this in front of a crowd of people who are shouting, and I'm going, are you kidding me? Another one is a video that they show of Andrew Caldwell when he was at the Kojic thing, and he says, "I'm not gay no more. I don't like men's," and folks falling out laughing, right? And so there's all of these. It seems like we keep getting captured doing some of they show Kenneth Copeland laughing, and everybody in his congregation falling out laughing because COVID wasn't going to happen and it wasn't going to be weird. They show these evangelical white churches where they say Donald Trump is still the president and it's been stolen. And so you see all of this and you're bombarded and you're going, I know if I see it, as many subscribers as there are on TikTok, you see all this and they go, no wonder folks don't like, they think the church is crazy. They think we've lost our mind. They think we're lunatic because the representation of church and God is in snippets of where people are doing some of the most ridiculous kind of stuff. I just had said it. Pastor Jones says the what is why people want to serve a God that we serve when they see us act, live, behave the way we do. Other than we are imperfect people, that shouldn't give us a blank check to treat others the way we do. I agree with that. So what do we need to do? How do we fix what's happening with the church? Pastor Sneed, let me start with you.
Oh, okay. How we gonna fix it all?
How do we start the process of fixing?
Oh, cool. Man, I really believe that we start really like where we are. I'm not going to be able to fix something in another city, in another state, or I shouldn't be trying to fix something in another city, in another state when things are broken in my own church, in my own community. And then I think something that we may fail to state or either remember our homes. And so I think a lot of times when we start talking about relationship, we talk about the church or what have you, I think that we fail to remember that the church is full of real people. They may be imperfect people, but they're real people. And then the individuals in our community have real needs. Those needs are relevant. And so I think instead of focusing, and this is just me, I think instead of focusing on the religious aspect of it or the, and I will say respectfully, even like the theological or the spiritual part of trying to impart certain things with individuals. I think meeting individuals where they are. I think ministering to individuals during their times of need. We talked about Jesus early and people not wanting our Jesus or not wanting our Christ or what have you. I think that one of the ways that the Savior was able to have such a major following was because he ministered to people. He spent less time with, going back and forth with church folk. And, when they checked him, or tried to, he dealt with that. But he was ministering in the community. He was in people's lives. He's working miracles. He's feeding individuals. So I think those things are some of the things that we can do to change the narrative of what people have heard, what people have seen, even experienced, because I think that has a lot to do with it. Like you said, media has always been a major platform in people's life that will change your thought, your views, your opinions, or at least shape them. But then you can't take anything away from your own experience. There's some people that you can't say anything negative about the church per se, because representatives of the church or representatives of Christ have been a blessing to them during major pivotal points and places in their lives. So I think if we can do that, if we can embrace individuals, we can minister to individuals. It was talked about earlier about us being unified and stuff and one, even ourselves. I think that's major in and of itself.
I'm going to read this and then I want Q to answer the same question. Jessica says the church should move from judgment to normalizing the process of being a Christian, which is an imperfect person striving to be better. A lot of people are familiar with the church always telling them they're going to hell for most things, when a lot of times it takes time to change. People of the Bible had a lot of the flaws people have today, but ended up doing great things to glorify the Lord. Being a Christian is a lifelong process that includes grace and mercy. I like that. We do have to, in the words of Bishop Foreman, we have to take away this Superman hero complex from everybody that wears the title of Christian. And we have to normalize the process, not saying it's okay to go out and do whatever, but understanding that folks do make mistakes, folks do have issues, and we have to help them work through them. Q, answer the question, how do we fix it? How do we begin the process of fixing it?
Globally, you're not going to fix it. So I wouldn't recommend that you try to, unless God put that on your heart to do. As an individual, what you can do is get yourself together. You as an individual. People, we always want to say a lot of stuff and quote a lot of scriptures, but why don't you actually do the work to get yourself together? If you have flaws, if you have things that are of a questionable moral character, get yourself together. When I got rid of my church lingo, I traded in my church lingo for actually living right. Then I found myself, I was able to introduce way more people to God than I ever did while I was standing on the corner trying to witness to somebody. Because it wasn't about what I said, it's about who I was. And even that, if they see that you are someone, number one, who knows who you are and secure in yourself and secure in what you believe, and you're not shaken by, I don't go off the rails when I see Kenneth Copeland or somebody else saying some crazy stuff. That's them. Okay, that's fine. Look at me. So whenever people want to attack Christians, what I can go back and say, have you seen, is that the example that I've given you? And that's the only thing that I really can stand on. And I can agree. Yeah, some of this stuff, yeah, people are crazy sometimes. And they say some crazy stuff, and I think they crazy just like a lot of people. But you cannot say that's all Christians, because I am also one of them. And if I haven't given you that representation, at least you got one person you say, at least you have one person where you could say, well, at least all of them ain't like that, because I know Q don't do that. I know Q is not judgmental the way that I think everybody else is. I know Q is not the one who's going to try to ridicule you or try to tear you down once he finds out something about you. And I'm also open and transparent about things that I deal with and things that I go through. But the first thing is, you cannot get yourself together, because you trying to teach morals to people when you yourself are morally bankrupt, it never works. And even if it temporarily works, then it's still just a house of cards. And the moment you did all this teaching and indoctrinating people, and they believe in you, and they find out all the mess you really do, now you've broken everything in them. They're like, I followed you, and you can't even follow yourself. So just start working on yourself first.
Derek, I'll ask you the question, and then I'll close with Bishop Foreman.
I love the fact that he said, just, don't try, just start with yourself, because I think that is so important, because that's where the work is individually at the individual level. I'll say a couple of things, and I'll try to be brief. First of all, I think that rhetorically, I'll just say, especially pastors, but it's everyone. I think we should ask the question of ourselves: why do we want people to come to our churches? Like, is it really because we feel like they have a need that we can meet, or we have the answer for, or is it something else? Like, honestly, can we honestly ask ourselves and answer that question? Are we looking to validate our opinions and validate ourselves and make ourselves seem, you know what I'm saying? Are we looking for that in the number? Because why is it about them coming to our church? But anyway, I'm just saying, ask yourself that question. Is it a competition? Is it about resources? All that. Ask yourself that question. And then lastly, I'll just say that if you are trying to deal with behavioral motivation, right? We talk a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The first rung on there is safety. And as if the church can't provide a safe place, we can't get to any of those other things. And so I know I've been on here with you all before, and we talked about church hurt, and we a lot of times we explain it away, but wonderful, wonderful ways, right? But if we cannot provide a safe place for those people, right? People who don't know about the church, all that kind of stuff, for them to come in and to wonder, to ask questions. If they can't do that in a safe space, then I feel like we can't do anything, right? Because that's the first need before we can move to anything else. And as a whole, I feel like the church is not a safe place because we're not safe to Christians, let alone people who are outside and not Christians, right? I wouldn't, if I had kids, I wouldn't trust my child alone. And let me stop. Done. Start individually. For me, that's where it takes place. Just fix yourself. I'll work on me. You work on you. If God is so wonderful and your church is so wonderful, I think that's a great thing. You enjoy it, and I'm going to enjoy mine.
All right, Bishop Foreman, I'm going to end with you. And let me say, this has been a pretty interesting conversation. There's some other areas I wanted to go in, but next week I really want to talk about purpose. I want people to kind of find out and experience their purpose. So we're going to have a really good conversation about that next week. But Bishop Foreman, how do we begin the process of fixing what people hate the most about church?
Yeah, and again, I think, and this is going to sound a bit harsh when I say it, but that's that person's issue. Jesus is the product, not me, not you, none of us.
But they think we're the church. But they think,
and I think that's, and I agree, and I think that's part of the issue. So then we got to usher them back over to what the actual product is. It is not me. It is not Foreman's, it is Christians. And so at the end of the day, and I don't disagree with your narrative, but I think that's part of the issue, is that it's about redirecting the attention and focus. But the second thing I'll say is that the church, I agree with everything everybody said, the church is not, again, a monolith. So at the end of the day, monolith, one worded or one way. At the end of the day, the reality is different things are going to work for different people. And I think this is what Scripture says, work out your own salvation. Back to what Q and Derek just said, with fear and trembling. Like you do what you need to do and take care of what you're supposed to take care of, and start right there with that and move forward from that. I would just say I think that the reality is there are some safe places and some safe churches and some safe environments and some safe people. Is it perfection? Absolutely not. You know why? Because people are involved. And whenever people are involved, you're always going to have challenges, issues, what have you. But I think the beauty of this issue, and I'll go back to something else you said, is trying to fix the issue. I think it is not so much as trying to fix the issue as well as to present a counter narrative. And if presenting a counter narrative, it is, so this is how we do it. And you know what? It's not perfect, but it is our best attempt to demonstrate what his body is and what it should be, and you'll get results in your life. And will it be perfect? No. Is it going to be flawless? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, I am not the product, and it is not my issue to fix someone else's issue with their perception of something. It is their responsibility to navigate through that process, and it is my responsibility to do my best to be an ambassador. But in being an ambassador, that doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily, that everybody's going to necessarily want to hear the message that you have to say. But at the end of the day, I still believe that God's church is the greatest thing on the face of the planet, and so does he. That's why God's.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight. This has been a great conversation. I agree. I'll close by saying something that my wife put up is that all of what we're saying is true, but we have to be careful not to produce roadblocks for others. And that's why we work on ourselves. Make sure that we are the representation that we want people to know who Christ is. Thank you guys so much. I will see you next week where we talk about why am I here? Why am I here? God bless you. Y'all have a great rest of your day. See you later.